I think with dealing with management teams from Portugal up to Turku in Finland, I think you can't travel all the time to the management team and provide your 2 cents face to face. That is why we have switched to Zoom meetings probably 18 months ago, and with the lockdown, this even increased. And I think we are becoming more and more effective when it comes to these meetings and supplying companies, being it actual portfolio companies or new projects that we are taking a look with our thoughts on how to improve their business plan. So geography in Europe is not playing a major role. Although I have to admit, we try to do one investment in every fund outside of Europe. And I was just working on a deal in Boston, which unfortunately we had to move to the sideline because of problems to syndicate it. Although it's an amazing technology in diagnostics for cancer patients. I think that is becoming a bit more difficult going over the Atlantic and work with the US teams with the lockdown and all that stuff. And that is why we are concentrating on Europe. I'm doing 2 deals actually more by chance in Germany. And within Germany, traveling is easy. Whereas if I want to go to France these days, it's a bit of a planning hassle that you are going through. But overall, I think our input is hopefully taken as a positive. And listening to management teams we are working with, at least they claim that we brought some positive things in. On the other hand, would they tell us if we would have talked and spoke only nonsense, but that they took our money? Likely not. Yeah, so hopefully that addresses your question.
It certainly does. And it's very interesting to hear how you actually before COVID-19 already shifted to doing the same things that everyone else has shifted to during the crisis and has come to realize is in many ways more effective even when the startup isn't that far away from you physically. So that's very interesting to hear. Marc, I'd like to dive a bit deeper into what it's like to invest in life sciences specifically, because I'm super interested in learning more about the part of our industry, which I think is probably the most important sector for venture capital. So the sector is at the same time notorious for having unique complexities when it comes to product development and the commercialization of the products. So what are your views on the model behind life sciences investing, and how do you contrast it to the more mainstream vertical?
Well, first of all, we are very glad to have a European Investment Fund as our major LP. And EIF is running a yearly event, at least they did it last year, where they're inviting all their fund managers and talk about topics arising and how the European ecosystem evolves and even how the subsectors are developing next to each other. So for me, and starting with that, potentially, I have a highest respect for VCs being active in either impact or clean tech, which I think is something you really have to have a big focus on moving forward. And I'm continuously discussing with these fund managers and try to get them into one or the other impact deal that we are doing. But people consider life sciences to being impact all the time, which I don't think it's true. But I can discuss that afterwards. So as said, I have a highest respect for impact and clean tech. What life sciences about life science, I think you have a lot of tech funds in Europe, and if you review the latest figures that EIF was publishing last year, a bit as a surprising data came up that returns of life sciences funds are not necessarily below the ones of the tech funds. And why is that? I think when we are investing, the assumption is that the life cycle of a particular portfolio company in our book is quite long. We tend to be very exit-driven, and what we say is within 5 years, this marriage on time should be over again, and the company has to preferably be sold to a larger strategic or IPO, which is not our preferable route or preferred route. And I think the difficult to understand part of life sciences investing is that if you are investing in several sub-segments in life sciences, then the exits and the dynamics are very different. For example, if you are having a therapeutics deal and you are showing a great phase 2A or even phase 2B data, and it's an interesting indication, a new modality, then the likelihood that you are taken out by that time by a big pharma company is rather high, and you are generating amazing returns, double-digit returns, multiples on that particular deal. Whereas in medtech, in diagnostics, and in digital health, it is very different. I think in medtech and diagnostics, the strategics tend to wait until you have generated first sales. So that means far after you have your regulatory approvals in major markets, recurring sales, you have to run post-marketing studies, and then you are sold in a critical moment between, okay, you have generated enough value, but right now we only pay you a multiple on what you have generated in sales or even on income, which I think is not a good game to be in as a VC, because that is more the game of a private equity player rather than a VC one. And then digital health, again, is very different, because there the business models are so new and there are so many subsectors. There it is more tending towards the therapeutics business model in VC, where you are sold based on fantasy rather than having hardcore facts that you are already having a product in the market and recurring revenues or number of patients that are served on a tool, and you have a 3-year follow-up for these patients. So that is why I think the life cycle of these companies in our books is so different, and the business models are so different that it's a bit hard to grasp how these different companies develop. And from the outside, the business model of these companies seem very complex. But I can tell you, me without having a natural sciences background, and I hopefully can say that, it's not the complexity level is not higher than in any other industry. And I would very much like to learn how tech VCs are structuring and segmenting between the sectors they are in. But it's I think it's not that complex when you're an insider rather than you're taking an outsider view on it.
You've actually referred this here and there throughout our conversation, but I love to deep dive into it, which is you, in fact, don't necessarily have a life science or natural science or R&D background, right? My question is really to that point in understanding how and how should investors with a different background behave, and what are the success factors for them to be successful in this sector, life sciences. And also with that in mind, maybe merging two questions into one, how do you go about building a relationship with founders? Because they might very well be quite scientific driven founders, right?
Right. I'm doing that business for 21 years, and at a certain point in time, I said, well, I have to assume that the technologies and the products these companies are developing from a scientific, technical standpoint make sense, just because of the fact that so many clever people with background in the field have taken a look and have worked on that project. Then it should make sense scientifically, medically. You can find points here and there, and if you're sifting through so many deals a year, even an MBA only could bring up a couple of questions where you say, let's think about that one. But I think also in the boardroom, you have so many good R&D people coming out of pharma industry and having published and about it, So that's fine. I think the different perspective that I'm bringing in, rather than being very financially driven, is how to create an equity story. Not scientifically driven, but something that is easily digestible by an acquirer. And there, I think that is it's probably more art than science, because you have to predict a bit what happens in the market. But having somebody on the table that is not necessarily taking that deep scientific look, but probably asking some question, but more focus on corporate development and exit, that sometimes is a refreshing element in a boardroom. And that is also admired by the entrepreneurs that I'm working with, that I'm taking a bit of a hopefully different and refreshing look into the destiny of the company. And, it's easy things like saying it's a marriage on time, and within 5 years, hopefully that deal is gone in our books and provides a tremendous return to our investors / us as managers. And then we can still have a cold drink together with the management. But, it's a marriage on time. And that is, I think, if you're being very upfront with that one and very focused on what the name of the game is, which is we are generating return for our investors, I think that is sometimes simplifying dealings even with the entrepreneurs.
Yeah, and I guess, Marc, you make sure to really put this point up front before you start any negotiations. And I admire you for doing that, because I think many VCs don't put enough focus on this point to founders, and that can create a lot of infighting between the investors and the founder later on.
Yeah, I think it's as you marry. If you marry somebody, I think if you are very upfront on what you expect and can't expect, I think that simplifies what you're doing afterward.
Very much so. Very much so.
Yeah, Marc, you were just referring to VBC III, so the third fund of Vesalius, and I would like to talk a little bit about that. You obviously have some titles under your belt in terms of fundraising, and I would love to know a bit more about the fundraising process for VBC III, especially considering that there was somewhat of a track record, and that VBC III, I believe, fell into a part of a bigger story, and in that context, I would love to know what was, in your opinion, some of the main success factors, and if you care to share, what mistakes have you made that you definitely would.
Yeah, so I think we are very, very happy and very glad that we're having European Investment Fund as the largest backer, a German pension fund second largest backer, and a plethora of sovereign wealth funds, family offices, high net worth individuals backing us. I think when it comes to lessons learned and what I would do different, I think we were still very much driven by the investment topic, really serving patients and addressing unmet medical and market needs, which we thought is a discriminating factor. And it's important that our investors also understand what we are doing and why we are doing it. However, we learned that there is a certain class of investors that couldn't care less of what you are investing in. It's just about return. And I think you have to decide as a fund manager what kinds of LPs you really want to have in your fund, and whether they are buying into your investment topic or whether they just want to make money. If it's the latter, then probably another asset class would be better for them rather than working with a life sciences VC. On the other hand, if you are having the opportunity to sit together with a successful entrepreneur in his or her 60s or so, and then you are explaining the story with a couple of war stories around it, then it makes a lot of sense, and it's really fun to discuss with these entrepreneurs which have been successful in other areas like automotive industry, and tell them why you are doing the things you are doing. And then I think the hit ratio, sitting together with these investors and the time spent, it's much wiser spend of time for me, at least, to bring that in. I think it's the first time we also got money from the MENA countries, so Saudi Arabia and surrounding countries, which was also very interesting to see how professional the asset managers in that part of the world are already. And so I think we were traveling a lot. I think I was traveling 5 or 6 times within a year to that region. And it was always very beneficial to learn for me.
That's very interesting to hear, Marc. I'd like to also know, because you've said this before as well, that Fund 1 and Fund 2 were more focused on early stage, while Fund 3 has shifted its focus to the late stage pipeline. And then at the same time, you're seeing that and a lot of other VCs are mainly focused at the therapeutic segment.